Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining. For those of you who don't know, I'm Amy Ruza, Youth and Family Programs Educator at the Rockwell Museum, and I'm thrilled to be presenting the Alley Art Panel, a public art discussion, in which we'll explore public art in communities, including our Corning community. Tonight's conversation will highlight the behind-the-scenes processes and creations of murals. We'll highlight many aspects, including what public art representation means in a city. We'll consider how art can inspire us, disrupt our daily routines, provoke dialogue, illuminate perspectives, and create an intentional culture of diversity and vibrancy within a community. I would like to start by acknowledging that the Rockwell is located on the ancestral land of the Seneca, one of the 6 nations of the Haudenosaunee or Iroquois Confederacy. It's an important part of our environment as we explore public art in public spaces, collaborating with members of the community and activating diverse voices. And now to kick things off, I'm joined by 3 amazing panelists. We have Betsy Cassanes, teaching mural artist for this year's Alley Art Project. Betsy is a 20-year participant in the Philadelphia Mural Arts program, director of the Sidon Diamond Gallery, and founder of Semilla Arts. We also have Eric Lehman, co-curator and lead organizer of Wall Therapy in Rochester, New York, and Connie Sullivan Bloom, director of the Arts Council of the Southern Finger Lakes and chair of the Public Art Committee in Corning. Our panelists will give a more in-depth introduction in a few minutes, but first I want to share what an exciting week it's been here in Corning as we paint our 13th annual Alley Art project titled Life in a Tapestry with Betsy Cassanes and High School Learning Center students. It's been a wonderful week with you, Betsy, and I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to work with you. This mural is located on the building facade of Pudgy's Pizza on Bridge Street, and it's a 75-foot wall canvas, which is quite a large canvas. Over the next 8 days, the alley will continue to be transformed into a beautifully bright and colorful masterpiece, inspired by our Dene or Navajo textiles in the Rockwell's collection. I encourage those of you who live locally to stop by and see the painting in progress. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Alley Art Project, it was established in 2008 and is a partnership between the Rockwell and the High School Learning Center of the Corning Painted Post Area School District. All the murals are directly inspired by works of art in the museum's own fine art collection. The program involves collaborating with professional artists and supporting students through the vigorous process of designing and producing public art, while also cultivating a sense of pride, ownership, and connection to the community. This year's project will culminate in a ribbon-cutting celebration next Thursday, August 19th, from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. at the mural site. Everyone is welcome and invited to attend, and all of you are welcome to stop by. And those event details can be found on the Rockwell's website and social media. I would now like to introduce Dakota Stevens, Alley Art Project Intern, Curatorial Track Ph.D. student, and Andrew W. Mellon Fellow at the University of Delaware in Art History. He will be facilitating tonight's discussion and act as our moderator for the panelists. His dissertation research is focusing on topics of cultural representation, indigenous muralism, and street art, and examining themes of storytelling, inclusion, and erasure, bringing awareness to many perspectives and stories of people that may not always be visible. He has a background in cultural anthropology and art history, and is driven by his dedication to the museum field and passion for public art. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to work with him this summer and appreciate all the research, documentation, resources, and outstanding participation, including helping to paint this year's Alley Art Project. Dakota, I'll turn things over to you now.
Thank you, Amy. I want to say welcome to our panelists again, as well as all of our visitors and viewers out there in the audience. Thank you all for coming out on this Thursday evening to join us for a discussion on public art. And as Amy said, my name is Dakota Stevens. I'm the 2021 Alley Art Project Intern and a second-year PhD student in art history at the University of Delaware. And I want to make sure that I say a huge thank you to Amy, as well as the rest of the Rockwell staff for making me feel so welcome all summer long as I've been here and tolerating all of the ideas that come spilling out of my head, just like this panel discussion. And so without further delay, I'm going to pass off the screen over to our panelists to introduce themselves. And I want to start with our teaching mural artist, Betsy Cassanes.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Betsy Cassanes. I am a Philadelphia public artist. I was born and raised in Philly. I started working on murals in 1994. I'm the director of a Seed on Diamond Gallery and Semilla Arts initiative. Semilla is a grassroots initiative that uses art as a catalyst for social change and collaboration among community members to transform public spaces. So the idea is we try to get folks involved at every aspect of the production of the mural, and invite them into the studios or out on the streets to participate in painting. A Seed on Diamond Gallery is creating safe space where folks can come and share their work through exhibits, music. It's a community gallery, and yeah. So I'm really excited and happy that I was able to come to the Rockwell and work in the Corning community and participate in as this year's artist. So thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Dakota, for organizing this, and thank you, Amy, for working with me on this project. So thank you, all the panelists as well. This mural is actually called Semilla de Patria, Seed of the Motherland. It's actually right outside of my block. Actually, I live in front of a square called North Square in Philadelphia, and it's a community that is quickly being gentrified. It's been a Puerto Rican neighborhood for decades, and for me, a lot of the bulk of my work has been in representing everyday people and the everyday struggle, showing us in a different light, no? As Latinos and brown folks, sometimes we're depicted in media in really stereotypical ways. So in my murals, I really try to highlight the, just everyday stories and beautiful moments within the community that sometimes are overlooked, and just having folks really see themselves in the reflection of the stories happening in the community is absolutely something that I try to focus on. This particular mural I finished at 9 p.m. The night before I came to Corning. So we worked on this mural for about 10 days in Philadelphia. We had worked on this mural on parachute cloth. So that's a technique that's worked on in Philadelphia. And the work is done in the studio. It's done on fabric, which makes it much easier to have folks come out and participate. When you're working on parachute cloth, you're not restricted by the weather conditions. You're not, it's not seasonal anymore. You don't have to work when it's warm. So you could work at 3 o'clock in the morning in the middle of winter and install on the first beautiful day in the spring. So this particular mural right here is one that I did with the Albright Knox Gallery in 2016. And they were interested in showing the history of Puerto Rican migration and of the Latino migration into the Buffalo community. So this one was also done on parachute cloth. A lot of my murals do have a communal element. So with this particular mural, we had high school students, various community organizations. We did this piece in 34 days. And we worked probably from like 8 in the morning till like 11 o'clock at night. So we had a morning, afternoon and evening shift of constant folks like rotating in and out to try to get it done in time. It was a massive building. And this is actually one that I did in Philadelphia. I was part of a 3-year study with the Philadelphia Mural Arts program and the Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities. And Yale University focused on on studying the work of 3 artists in 3 different communities. And the focus was how having a structured public art curriculum embedded into the therapy of men and women receiving treatment for drug and alcohol addiction, how it aids in the process of recovery. So I worked with patients every year. This is actually the 2nd year of that particular study. This was also done on fabric. And this one took us about, a year because there were 9 months of workshopping with the patients, and they participated and created part of the mural and designed sections of it. So this is the final piece, 2nd year. The 3rd year, we actually did 30 more buildings on that particular block. So that's some of my work. I probably have about 60 murals worldwide. Some of those murals that are considered one are larger than the city block. So we have the Spring Garden Street Bridge that's 940 feet long on both sides of the bridge. So kind of 60. So anyways, thank you. This is my work, and I'm happy to share it with you guys.
Thank you very much for being here with us today, Betsy. Next, we're going to go over to Eric to talk to us about his work with wall therapy.
Hello, everybody. So yeah, my name is Eric Lehman. I live and work in Rochester, New York. Although I'm originally from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, just outside Harrisburg. I came up here in the 1993, and I've called Rochester my home pretty much since. Like Betsy, I also, in addition to everything else, have a gallery, although it is currently in pop-up mode again, called 1975, which has been operating since about 2008. But today we're mainly going to focus on my work with wall therapy, which was started by my friend Dr. Ian Wilson originally in 2011 as kind of a proof of concept called visual intervention. The whole thing started as a way to bring inspiration to the community, particularly youth. Our official statement is, we're a public community level intervention using mural art as the vehicle to address our collective need for inspiration, which is where our roots were. We've since continued evolving to focus on making sure that underrepresented communities are getting a chance at the table and getting artists who don't often get to be part of the festival or mural circuit that exists get to be on the main stage. Very quickly, this mural is Faith 47's Rhapsody from 2012. The little specks in front are actually Dr. Wilson in the white shirt, and I'm sitting on the wall in the black shirt for scale. This is located downtown. Most of our work is downtown. Actually, if you could skip to the next slide. This doesn't encompass all of them. This is like a quick map of Rochester. We have this Google map out there. There's actually a couple more murals that are a little closer to Lake Ontario, but then you couldn't really get a good visual of how we spread these out. We've done roughly 135 murals, working with 93 local, national, and international artists. The goal is, in one part, bring in talent from around the world, but also showcase the local artists to show that they have every right and ability to be on the same stage as folks who have a more international name. As you can see from the map, it's spread across the city of Rochester, focusing on downtown all the way up to Lake Ontario near Charlotte, New York. over the last decade, we've been working to effectively transform the city of Rochester into a public, free, 24/7 art gallery open to anyone and everyone. One of the not originally knowing how long it was going to last, because we are very much a DIY nonprofit, kind of doing everything through our own auspices. We've found that fans, as people become fans of the project, they begin to, by nature, if you want to see all the murals, you have to travel to different parts of the city that you have either never been to before, or maybe just frankly uncomfortable with. And this is a way to create dialogue with the folks in those communities. Anytime we are, especially during our normal July festival, when people are out there, you see folks from all over the city of Rochester talking together, and we're trying to use art as a way to, bridge our community and show everyone just how small the city is, and really just jump off whatever discussions can happen from there. And yeah, ultimately, it's for me, it's about bringing art to the people. And through my work with 975, but also in wall therapy, I have a real interest in kind of smashing the walls between kind of traditional institutions. Sorry, guys, but this idea that art is only for a certain type of people, or a certain class or an economic class of people, but really showing that art should and can be a part of everyone's lives, and how it can enrich your life, and quite honestly be a form of therapy, whether it's just taking part in it, or even just living with it in your neighborhoods. One of the things we also like to do, this is Avery by a Canadian artist named Jairus from in 2014, on the site of an old beech nut food processing plant. So a lot of what we like to do, we do end up working, especially for our larger murals, in some like the more industrial or kind of neglected areas of the city, and recontextualizing that architecture and even those neighborhoods. And there's a mural just peeking out behind us, or behind this, which is one of our largest ones, which is called Long Mural, by an artist, Addison Carl, who is a US native, but who was at the time living and working in Berlin, and currently lives and works out of Italy. But yeah, well, a lot more to talk about. Excited to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Looking forward to hearing more about wall therapy as we get on with the discussion. So unless we want to go over to Connie for her to introduce herself to us a little bit more.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much to the Rockwell and to Amy and Dakota for including me on this panel. I'm really honored to be with Betsy and Eric to talk about this tonight. So thanks so much. As Amy said, I'm the executive director of the Arts Council of the Southern Finger Lakes and the chair of Corning's Public Art Committee. And I came to the arts through a circuitous route. I came through cultural anthropology. So I came to this area to do field work for my dissertation on same-sex marriage. And that took me out into the hinterlands all over this county and all over the region, talking to people. This was back in the early 2000s, about when when same-sex marriage was considered really out there as a possibility and wasn't commonplace and really hadn't been totally accepted yet, about what was motivating their values and belief system around that. And so I really became acquainted deeply with the community at that point. And then in 2007, I was able to start working for the Arts Council as a folklorist. And when I started as a folklorist, I was able to, again, continue to really reach people in the rural areas around Corning and Elmira, and talk to them about things that that were very surprising. And so in the course of that, I became acquainted with two artists' work. One is on the screen right now, and that's a man named Amos Oakton, who lived out in Addison, New York, in a one-room schoolhouse that he was squatting in. And the schoolhouse didn't have any running water, and it didn't have any electricity. And Amos made art from found materials around him, found lumber, magic markers, pen, that kind of thing, just where he was. And then Kate, if I can see the next slide. This piece is by another self-taught artist named Martha Robert Shaw, who lived out in what is now Big Flats. And Martha painted with just house paint on the interior of her house. So her husband had fought in World War I. He was exposed to poison gas. When he came home from the war, he was unable to get out. And so Martha decided that she was going to bring nature in. And so she painted literally on every surface of the inside of her house. And the reason why I have those two images here when we're talking about murals and we're talking about public art is to say that art is not a secondary consideration for people. Art is fundamental to the human condition. People who do not have running water, people who do not have electricity, people who do not have enough to eat will make art. They will do it somehow. They will find it. And so when we talk about public art, or we talk about bringing art to the people, we really don't need to bring art to the people, right? We need to let the people express themselves. And it's sort of what Betsy was saying while she was talking, is this idea that what is really necessary is for people who are underrepresented, visually underrepresented, to be able to see themselves. And we have that situation with the rural poor as well as with other populations of people. There are a lot of people in our world who are underrepresented in the visual arts. And public art needs to really focus, in my opinion, one of the primary things that need to be thought about when you're thinking about public art is a keen sense of place. So public art needs to express the identity of the community. And when I say that, I don't mean that it needs to be bland or have that common denominator type of thing that everybody has to agree it's beautiful. That's not the case. Public art needs to be able to tell the story of a community, its struggles, its real experience. I love the whole idea of what Betsy was talking about, of mentally ill people and people with substance abuse working on their own representation in this mural. And I do see public art as having that aspect to it. I agree also with Eric that it needs to have both, for a successful public art program needs to bring people from all over the country, maybe all over the world, to kind of let us see what is possible, to get beyond what we're used to looking at and experiment and understand things a little differently, while at the same time maintaining a place for the local artist to be, equal with that extraordinary person that's being brought in. So I am very, very happy to be here with Betsy and Eric, and I look forward to hearing this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie, for that wonderful introduction and for introducing, I'm sure most of us, myself included, to two artists that I hadn't heard of before today, and two artists I will definitely be trying to learn more about following the conclusion of our talk. But I'm going to throw a little curveball our panelists' way and ask them a question that it wasn't necessarily on the sheet that I sent you, but I think something that all of you have been talking about, and that's the importance of public art and art in general in communities writ large. And so I was wondering if you all can talk a little bit more about how communities can really work to support public art and bring it out more so that you can get that storytelling element and find those hidden narratives. Betsy, I'm really intrigued about you living in a historically Puerto Rican neighborhood and that's being currently gentrified, but now there is a mural there that is a direct representation of a group of people that now will always be able to find a home in that area. Connie talking about individuals who would be considered representatives of outsider art groups. And Eric talking about, even just recontextualizing old factory architecture into something that resembles more of a location somebody would want to go to. So I'm wondering if you all can take a little bit of time and talk a little bit more about that community factor and how what you do and think about with public art really builds into that element of storytelling and community building.
Who wants to go first? All right. Well, I mean, I'll talk a little bit about, since I spoke, you know, for us, you know, we are, you know, funded almost entirely by crowdfunding with a little bit of grants. So in that regard, you know, from the very, you know, from our outset, you know, it's folks in the community basically putting a stake in and having a part in the creation of that process. You know, I can't underscore, you know, the challenge of just the economics of trying to do a program like ours, you know, that isn't, you know, is kind of done on its own. We are incredibly dependent on working with, you know, funding from the community, working with different neighborhood associations in order to just be able to do it, to exist at all. And further, you know, we admittedly started naively. You know, we're like, all right, we're just going to do this thing. We have an idea. Let's see what happens. And for us, it was being open to, you know, once we made those first crazy steps of you know, one summer, all of a sudden there's 3 multi-story, or I apologize, 12 multi-story murals that were in a city where there really wasn't a ton of mural work, aside from like the graffiti that would exist in the North Clinton area, and a smattering of murals that kind of pre-existed. You know, listening to, you know, the community, and some of it was, you know, was just shock of like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? You know, what gives you the right, etc. But then listening to them and listening to those concerns and being smarter about how we place and curate murals and locations and artists and things like that. So, I mean, that's a start. I definitely don't want to dominate, but for us, a lot of it was just listening. And so that, you know, as I joke, I went from a month of hate mail in 2012 from people who were like, what are you doing? To, you know, within 2 or 3 short years, it's 1 or 2 emails coming in of people didn't like, and that I felt was a good sign that we were listening and getting better at reflecting what's going on in the communities and listening to what's going on. I have all the other stuff, but I want to hear what everyone else has to say.
Right. I think that the participation of folks, like
Right.
folks being able to participate in the community, in the murals, is really important. Not every artist is going to have the ability to do that. Not every artist is a teaching artist, right? Not every artist is a teaching artist. Some folks prefer to work on their own. I mean, I've been doing public art and teaching since '94. So for me, I feel like I always got a lot more from it when folks were surrounded by, well, when I was surrounded by folks in the community. And I don't really care if folks are artists or not. If you can hold a brush, then you could come on the wall, right? And we usually, like, what I try to do is design murals. There's always a section that's really painterly that probably they won't be able to do, but there's a million things that you can do in the community. And there's a million different things that you can do in the studio. So the idea of opening it up and having people feel like they're welcomed into the space and they're welcome to participate in something that's much bigger than them is super important. I think public art, because obviously it's so public, impacts on so many different levels. Just the beginning, you know, on us, on the muralist, on the artist, when you're doing that initial research of communities and really trying to understand like the artwork that you're going to come in. You know, I've done murals in different places and that I've never stepped foot in. So it's really understanding what the need is. And you know, with Semilla, like a lot of the work that Semilla does is about working with these larger institutions. Like I'm working with the Mural Arts program. So when I'm working with the Philadelphia Mural Arts, you know, we're required to do about 2 days of community paint day. So that's usually a 3-hour workshop where tables are set out and your parachute cloth is down and you have loads of volunteers and people come in and they get to paint a little bit. What I try to do is once we start production, once we start working on the fabric, is we open it up and the projection, the application of like initial colors, every part of that, we let folks participate in it. I try to have hours. When I had my studio in Philly, I closed my studio a month after the pandemic. But because I'm living between Puerto Rico and Philadelphia. I lived 8 months in Puerto Rico and 4 months in Philadelphia. So in Philly, we had the studio for several years and we would open it up from 9 to about 7 p.m. and folks could come in at different stages. And because I've been teaching so long, I had kids that I was teaching in like late 90s. I had students that I taught, you know, I taught at the Charter High School for Architecture and Design in Philadelphia, where I had a public art and community program. And so students that I taught when they were 14 and 15 were coming back when they were in their 30s with children. And it's about reconnecting with those folks and really creating a space where people feel like they are an intricate part of the story, but also in communities of color, having folks realize that we are a relevant part of the story and having us be the ones that tell it, right? Is that we have to be in there and sitting at the table and making sure that we're the ones who tell our own stories.
Yeah.
If I can, there's one little thing I wanted to add that Betsy reminded me of, where because we have a lot of artists who are those solitary artists who you know, especially initially, and we've tried to, you know, made a concerted effort to try and bring in more community-based artists as we've gone along. But you know, at our max, you know, we usually do a week-long festival in July. You know, we have about 75 volunteers who have started with us about 2013 when we really opened it up and we're starting to figure out what we were doing, who stayed with us that whole time, kind of same thing. And they sometimes, you know, they may start just as someone who sits on the side and is a runner for the artist. And then as they get along, they you know, may be more comfortable just being in that scenario, may start to help and, like you said, do fills or do something that kind of fits in their wheelhouse. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to a lot of thoughts come to mind as both Eric and Betsy were sharing, and two of them, I guess I'll try to remember them both, but one is that I love the model that the Rockwell has used for its Alley Art project, in that it has really connected with the High School Learning Center students and has them as part of the design process, and really is really deeply embedded in like that community here in our town. And one of the evidences maybe for the fact that that has worked so far is that none of them have been vandalized. Now, eventually that may not be the case. So I'm not saying that that's a measure for the success of public art. And like Eric had said earlier, you know, he started out when he got 1 million hate mails, and now, you know, just a few. And you know, and again, the hate mails are not necessarily a measure of whether or not this is good public art, because people do need to adjust, right? They need to understand that, and both of what, you know, Betsy and Eric said about like their process as artists and working with community members, I won't try to reiterate any of that because they've said it way better than me. So I'll just throw out, like, from my point of view as the chair of the Public Art Committee, another thing that is an integral part of making public art real in a community is infrastructure. So, you know, we need, as a municipality, as a county, as a country, you know, to really put our money where our mouth is and value. If we value art, we need to value art, right? And that means like paying artists. It means like maybe Eric wouldn't have to crowdfund for every single penny for his project, you know, like what infrastructure can be built, whether that's a public art committee, you know, those lots of models with the 1% for art, where that's something that real estate developers have to do in order to be able to develop there. So we're not talking about tax money. We're talking about what is to the developer, a very minor fee on top of all the other fees that they're paying to develop. So, you know, but for the artist, you know, it's a huge amount of money, because you know, 1% of a multi-million-dollar project is a lot of money for artists. And I'm not saying that any of these things are easy to accomplish. I'm not trying to make it sound oversimplify, but what I am saying is that the same amount of passion and dedication that the artists that you've just heard talking, you know, Betsy and Eric, who have basically put their life's blood into doing this, we as community need to answer that with a commitment on our side as well. I think that that many communities kind of coast on the reputation of their artists. I mean, I'm not making accusations, but yeah, you know, I mean, I think that if we want the benefits that art brings to our communities, whether that's tourism, whether that's a sense of pride of place, whether that's rehabilitation, whether that's revitalization, whatever the benefits are of art, if we truly believe that those benefits exist, then there needs to be a monetary and policy commitment from the community to support that. And if that happens, I think that's magical, right? And if it doesn't happen, artists are still going to make art, but it'll make it a whole lot easier if that happens. So,
and I think that, I'm sorry, I'm just going to cut in. I think not only like thinking about the 1%, I feel like I've been invited recently, and I think it's super interesting. With these more online, I was reached out by 2 organizations, and it's basically a website where you have various artists that have a page, and you put like several of your murals, and then a bunch of folks that own buildings around the country. And it's basically connecting you directly to them. They'll tell you exactly how much their budget is. And it kind of, because the 1% is great. And I've participated in a lot of projects like that, also in the online call for entry website. But I feel like there should be different levels, definitely different levels, because sometimes I feel like maybe the 1% only looks at like the people that they know, you know, and or that the way that information is being disseminated isn't reaching like artists that really can make a huge impact. Not that they're not reaching artists that are making a huge impact, but I feel like these other organizations that are kind of using media and using tech as a way to go directly to the artist and link them directly to organizations or realtors, I don't know if it's realtors would be the word, just building owners of these corporate buildings that need projects, right? And you're just setting people up, and it's a little bit of it's a process that's a little bit simpler. You're not going through this. You still have to write a proposal, and you still have to write what you need. But it feels a little more accessible. Like I don't have an issue getting work, getting projects. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. But for folks that are just starting out, like being able to figure out ways to get their foot in the door, or maybe working, like setting up, like I try to work with an internship program, and I try to work with younger artists and try to like set things up so that they feel like when they're like walking out, like I like using my studio as a stepping stone. Like this is just like you know, when you leave here, is like you could decide how it is that you want to move forward. Like I'm absolutely like in favor of sharing information. Is like ask, you know, it's like when we're working with younger artists, it's like ask whatever you need to ask. If we're sharing space, then I think it's really important, especially for women in public art. There is not enough women in public art right now. In every single festival that I've been in, I've been the minority. You know, I was in a festival recently in Puerto Rico. There were 10 artists. I was the one woman. In New York, same thing, 10 artists,
Yeah.
only women. In Peru, 45 artists, 5 women. So, you know, and recently, you know, we were actually, yeah, I mean, and the thing is, it's that it is a project that is dominated by men, but we have to start nurturing some of these younger, there's so many women that are painting. There's so many women that are phenomenal artists. And it's just, you know, creating that accessibility for folks to realize this is an option.
Yeah, no, I think those are all fabulous points. And Betsy, I wanna talk a little bit more about what you just said about women in public art. But at the same time, I also want to acknowledge that we've got about 15 minutes left in our time. So if anyone has questions from the audience, please go ahead and start writing those into the Q&A so we can ask those in a little bit. But now, again, returning to women in public art, are there things that we can do as community members and as leaders in public art organizations and arts organizations to make public art more accessible for women artists so that we can find some sort of equity in the gap?
Absolutely. I mean, I think like if we really like I would happily lead like a 2-month workshop where I would work with communities, local artists, right? I would work with, say, 5 to 10 women, and you know, we identify walls, and we go through the process of understanding like the material, the process, how to work in community, and give them their wall so that, you know, we have a space where they could at least get started, right? I have a whole program that I've written up to do just that, and it's just about like being funded, right? It's like you get an artist that can actually do this kind of program. I've been teaching for about 30 years. I could run this program. I could, you know, set up, and it's about having these conversations and really understand when you're in these programs is like how to lead and how to follow. I'm just as willing to pick up a brush and help somebody else finish a project as I am to lead it. So it's about really really understanding how you can help in lifting up other public artists and having them really understand the process. I feel like it's unfortunate that folks don't share information for fear of not getting more projects. And if you're, you know, if you're good at what you do, there's usually an abundance.
Yeah, I mean, from our experience, you know, we have set out intentionally starting around like 2017, you know, to talk about the festivals. You know, we were analyzing what was going on, and we switched it. So that year, I just had to double check and make sure I got my numbers right. You know, we had with 10 artists, 7 were women, and 3 were men. The next year, it was 50-50. And then basically COVID. Yeah, so
Yeah,
you know, we ran into that, but you know, it's you know, it's hard for me to speak about from like, you know, what can the community do? It's like financially support it, you know, whether it's the mechanisms of government or institutions, things like that. But I can say that some of our most successful local artists who've gone on to, you know, who their first mural was with wall therapy are the ones who are most successful right now and are painting around the country, painting around the world, both from the experience that they had there and then the national, international artists they met during that festival. Basically what along lines what you were saying, Betsy, is like they're having these interactions, connections, making personal connections that help open doors further out. And again, it's that idea of sharing the information, sharing connections. You know, for us, we joke it's, you know, once you're in, you're part of the wall therapy family. And
Right.
anyone who's been there, we're going to help connect that to try and get your artwork out more.
Right. And it's about intention, right? If we're intentional about it and we say, all right, this institution next year we're going to focus on, if this is really what we would like to do is like next year we'll focus on working with 5 women, and the end result will be 5 murals by these 5 women, and then they could do a workshop where they partner. You know what I mean? Like I think it's not an unsolvable problem. I think it's a problem that can easily be resolved. It's just about having the opportunity and paying folks for their time.
Right.
That's really at the end of the day, that's really what it is. It's a useful, transformative process that affects so many people. It doesn't just affect the artist. It affects communities. It affects anybody that's participating, anybody that's living with the art. I mean, every single step of the production of the work is pretty transformative, and it creates, I mean, I'm always impacted by the murals that we're working on, and then we meet so many wonderful, beautiful people. For every different project is a new set of people. Sorry.
Can I just I just want to riff on something that Betsy just said, which is you got to pay the artists, because I think bottom line is women artists and artists of color are not playing on an equal footing with white men who, and this is the same thing for, you know, college internships. It's no different. It's the whole, right, exactly. It's the whole thing. If you can't afford to do something for free, you know, do your internship for free, do that mural for free, or whatever the thing is, then or do it for this cut rate thing, or you've never been trained how to ask for what you're really worth in terms of your artwork, you know, then you can't, then those populations are never going to have equal footing. So if we're serious about reaching out to diverse artists and to the diversity of our community, then I think, you know, paying the artists is bottom line first step.
Right. Yeah. And just to speak, because as someone who's running a festival, since the beginning, everyone gets the same fee, everyone gets the same coverage for hotel, food, travel, you know, whatnot. Like it's whether you're low, you know, we the first year we were trying to figure out the fees, but ever since, you know, 2013 on, it's been flat. You know, whether you're the largest artist on the roster or the local painting your first mural, you're getting the same fee.
Right, and that's great, and especially when you're doing festivals, and the festivals I think are key. Like they're definitely key ways to really start activating community spaces. Having like long-term, like, and year-long projects as well that happen in between, right? The festivals usually are like once a year, 10 days, and it's like it's fast, it's a lot of fun. And but then, you know, then obviously we're doing larger projects that are taking time. And I mean, I think like I always open up my studio. Sometimes I open it up to friends' children, you know, that are in their teens and they're interested in the process. I mean, I always dragged my kids along. I have my son is 26 and my youngest is 22. And I mean, they've been working on my wall since they were really young. Really young. And I would just drag, you know, and friends reach out, can my kid hang out? And I think really, if you ask, I think most artists would open up the space for those kind of interactions. I mean, if it's appropriate.
Right.
I think that's really, really very important. I think one of the things that I feel like we've kind of been getting to is that public art in a way creates an extended family. And that family encompasses the entirety of your community, whether you know all of the people or not. You know, people who live down the street from a mural see that same mural, and so you have a sort of connection with those people. You have a lived incidence where everybody's kind of mind meets the same point, and then you stare at the mural. I know I had the opportunity to see Betsy's most recent mural that you saw on the first slide during her introduction last weekend, and I could have stared at that for hours. And just in the bit of time that I was staring at it, you know, a couple people walked by and also looked up at it, and you know, we made eye contact and just kind of smiled. because it was a kind of a beautiful thing in a town. And I want to shift our gears over to our Q&A now as well, and again invite more questions. But one question that's popped up, and everyone's kind of mentioned it here and there, and I think it's still on everybody's mind as the Delta variant makes progress across the world. But thinking about the impact that COVID-19 had on public art and murals that were created, and just thinking about it in the ways that it impacted all of you. I know a couple of festivals that actually went remote, and that they had the artists painting in their own hometowns instead of at the festival site, and then just digitally shared everything, but they still got to be a part of that kind of festival feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, it totally disrupted our crowdfunding. So I had raised $5,000 or $6,000 towards this. I was just gearing up, and one of that was a grant, and so our curation was going to be female, femme, non-binary artists. So we're like, what do we do? So we just turned it into a call for ideas. And we're like, it's only open to female, femme, non-binary. And we broke that 5,000 into 10 $500 mini grants with the idea of, okay, make kind of same thing, make art in your place, make art in your community, your neighborhood. That way you can kind of keep it small, keep it safe. No restrictions on how you use the money. And it was really successful. Like we kind of were making up as we go. How do we kind of adapt on this? But we did everything from murals to costume creation to performance, and like there was even no restriction on what you made. It was just that you made art in your community to try and be the light in the flame. One of which was even like these tiny little candles to show like we're all interconnected on this, that got spread around. But yeah, I know like Living Walls in Atlanta, same thing. They had the I believe it was like 4x6 basically banners, and artists locally were creating it, hanging at their house. So it's just a lot of adaptation, because we, at the time, especially in those early days, we did not know. Like we were not about to force people to travel before we could not travel at all. Like we want to keep people safe. Like that's contrary to what we're trying to do. So just how do we adapt from there? And then I saw as people, as things, got a little more known, you just had a lot of individuals going out and making murals themselves locally, in that gap. So.
Yeah, I was completely devastated by Corona. I lost every single project that year. Every project was canceled. I have a home in Philly and a space in Puerto Rico that I was Airbnb-ing, and that was also completely, everything just stopped. So I really had to think creatively on how I was going to be able to survive, because my work is so communally based. Because my work is with, like, I'm always around lots of people. So I really had to start thinking, all right, like maybe I could reach out to like architectural firms. I designed the metal gate. I started thinking, all right, well, I mean, I'm always creating patterns. I could definitely create like wallpaper designs. I could definitely create floor designs. I could definitely, and it's just became this shift of, all right, how can I survive this, because I lost every single project. And my very first project was this past June in Springfield, Massachusetts. And now I mean I have 9 murals. This is my 3rd mural since Corona. This is my 3rd, and I'll have 9, about 9 by mid-November. So I mean, things are definitely like coming back, but it was definitely really, really tough. I mean, we definitely had to rethink how, is that we closed the gallery, we closed the studio, we had like some long-term rentals in Philly, but for the most part, everything was shut down. So it was just like, as an artist, you learn how to live in those spaces with nothing, right? You learn how to live with sometimes having an abundance and sometimes having $6 in your account. And, that's just how it is. And, I feel like at ease in both spaces, but obviously I don't want to be in. I'd rather not have to worry about how much milk costs. But, that's just the kind of like the life that we live. And we have to it's not easy to do this kind of work. You really have to want to do it. I mean, it's a wonderful life to be able to do. But when things like this happen, I mean, your whole world can be derailed.
Right. And to jump in, that shouldn't be the case. We're talking about what should communities at large do? Like the amount of intrinsic value that they're pulling, any community pulling from, not naming any names, that are, using things in their visitor guides or using stuff that they've not paid for, like they've not invested in, but are reaping the benefits of. Like it's a travesty. It needs to be flipped, and artists valued. And as curator, that's become one of the things that I fight for, even, again, trying to find these alternate projects for folks, kind of putting the foot down, like, no, this is how much it costs. It costs money to have a sketch fee. You can't change your mind 30 times if you're going to do this, and putting, reinforcing that value on the work that's happening. And then just trying to help raise it as much as we can until we get to like people are comfortable again. And that's even how we've switched. Even, a project I'm working on, originally we're going to do call for entries, and we're like, no, call for qualifications. We're not going to have anyone do free work. Show us what you've already done, and then we're gonna kind of go from there. Maybe give us, a paragraph or something, a couple sentences, like what would you want to try and do. But the goal is to just, educate and inform about the value of the work that everyone's appreciating effectively for free. So.
And Connie, I want to make sure you have a chance to respond to this, and wondering as well if you can kind of bring us home to the southern tier and how artists have dealt with the pandemic here in your experience.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was very, very difficult, and as both Eric and Betsy have just said, it just all of those gigs. I mean, essentially, most artists that we work with at the Arts Council are gig artists, and everything just boom shut down. We again, I agree with what Eric just said about valuing artists. I mean, we at the Arts Council, we were able to do very small emergency arts grants for people right at the beginning of the pandemic, before like unemployment insurance kicked in, and they were really small. They were $250, and a single artist could apply for up to 3. So you could get like up to $750. So, it wasn't a lot at all, but it might keep your rent, pay your rent and keep it. And so I love that mini grant idea that you just said, Eric, because that's something that we really know works. If you give small amounts of money to artists and you don't say, you don't tell them how to use it, they're going to use it in great ways. So that's a really interesting idea. And then I love the whole call for qualifications. I hadn't ever thought about that. And I think that's a great thing. Or look forward to talking to you more about it. But yeah, it definitely impacted the southern tier. And then just to sort of come to the southern tier on a little bit different note, one of the things I want to make sure that I get to say is that I think that Corning is really situated to be a hub for public art, partly because of our size. So, I mean, Binghamton's got public art, Ithaca's got public art, Elmira's got public art, and that's fabulous. But could Corning be a hub? Well, yes, and partly it can, because we could set out and make a plan to get enough public art to have a critical mass, right? To have this impact where it's like, oh my God, look at this, like everywhere you turn, partly because we're small enough. So this is something that I think that as a city, we should think about, like, how could we make this a reality? Because it is within our grasp. I mean, it's not going to happen tomorrow, and that's fine, but we could make this happen in the next 3 to 5 years if we want to. And I think bottom line is, do we want to?
I know I want to. And I hope all of our audience members out there listening want to as well. We have run a little bit over time, but I want to just make sure that our panelists, if you have anything else that you'd like to add, you have the opportunity to do so now, as well as if you have links or any sort of contact info you'd like to make sure that all of our audience members get, feel free to drop those into the chat to everybody. And they will be able to open them up and find their way to some interesting opportunities out there in the world. You know, I can't recommend anyone who's capable of visiting Rochester go up there enough. The wall therapy program is fantastic. So many amazing murals. If you're in Philly, you got to go check out Betsy's. But also, if you're in Corning, stop by the wall over at Pudgy's to come see the progress through the coming week. And, you know, really have to take my hat off to you, Connie, as well, for being in charge of such a wonderful arts organization in the Southern Tier, and really working to advance artists whose names don't necessarily come across everyone's plates in our history books, as I, for one, know. Yeah, just any last moment comments you would like to make, please feel free.
Thank you all for coming out and spending some time with us. Thank you, Connie and Eric. This was wonderful. I'd love to continue the conversation.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Thank you for setting this up. Amy, thank you too.
Yes, I know.
Amen.
Betsy, we need to have you in Rochester.
I would love to.
We gotta, we'll have to talk about that. And I will actually say we're gonna do a kind of in tune with the origins as a small weekend, kind of guerrilla proof of concept in 2011. We're gonna have a few artists, fingers crossed that nothing goes bad in the next couple of weeks, painting over Labor Day weekend.
Nice.
Right now it's Max 242. It's going to come back out, and we're looking at Nico Cathcart, who's painting with us in 2018, and she wants to do a collab with a local who goes by Salu, who's currently he's currently painting in the Memorial Art Gallery right now, like a rotating mural that is just getting refreshed, and then, you know, we'll see if anyone else joins us in that, but right now that's kind of what we're stepping up. Just a couple murals, again, kind of dealing with the delta and trying to keep it manageable, but still wanting to get some paint on the walls. It's because at the heart, that's what we love to do.
Absolutely. And I just got to say that we've had 3 amazing women that have been working with us on site that are all
awesome,
incredible artists that you might want to meet.
Send
them your way.
Info.
Get them on walls as well.
Yeah.
Well,
and thank you again. Yeah, thank you to everyone. It's been awesome learning about everyone and having this opportunity.
Well, thank you again to all of our audience members for coming out and joining us tonight. I hope we were able to bring a little bit of some interest to your evening here with our conversation about public art. And thank you again to Amy and the rest of the staff at the Rockwell Museum for making this possible with the Alley Art Project. Please go check out the website for it and the walls around town. As well as, again, thank you to the Rockwell for letting me come and be an intern for the summer and take my crazy one-off meeting idea of we should do a panel discussion about public art and making it an actual thing. It's been a really pleasure to talk with all of you tonight, and I hope we can do it all again soon. So
yeah,
thank you.
I remember one last thing, my very first mural tour I gave in 2013 was to the Alley Arts program.
Oh, nice.
So it was a school bus full of students came up, and we walked around for 2 hours looking at murals.
Oh, fantastic.
That's awesome.
Wonderful. Glad we could bring it full circle.